There is a moment in the life of every soul when the weight of its own voice becomes unbearable, a moment when the litany of justifications, reasons, delays, and rationalizations finally echo so loudly in the mind that the heart can no longer pretend it doesn't hear them. That moment, while uncomfortable, is not a punishment. It is a sacred invitation. It is the call to remember that your excuses are not the truth. Your excuses are lies. They are not your nature. They are not your destiny. They are not the voice of your soul. They are the trembling echoes of fear masquerading as logic. They are the desperate whispers of an ego afraid of its own extinction. And yet you, magnificent you, are not the ego. You are not the fear. You are not the story you've repeated to yourself 1,000 times. You are the witness, the seer, the awareness beneath it all. There is no excuse in this world more powerful than the divine essence of who you already are. There is no limitation that can rival the infinite intelligence that breathes you, that loves you, that created you, not as a mistake, but as a miracle. But the ego is clever. It will tell you, you're not ready when the soul is whispering. You were born ready. The ego will insist, you don't have what it takes, when the soul knows you are what it takes. The ego will scream, what if you fail? While the soul gently smiles, but what if you fly? You were not sent here to live in avoidance. You were sent here to awaken. An awakening requires the courage to stop believing the lies that have kept you small, the lie that you are not enough, the lie that your past defines you, the lie that it's too late, the lie that someone else must give you permission. No one holds the key to your life but you. Excuses are the language of a self that has forgotten its origin. They are the footprints of fear etched into the soil of your potential. And every time you choose to repeat them, you affirm your bondage. But there is another voice, quieter perhaps, but infinitely truer. It is the voice of the eternal within you. It does not beg, does not argue, does not demand. It simply waits for your remembrance. That voice is the soul. And the soul does not entertain excuses, not because it is cruel, but because it is truthful. It knows that to buy into an excuse is to betray your own divinity. And that betrayal is the root of all suffering. Every time you say, I can't, you deny the infinite source that animates your very breath. Every time you say, I'm not ready, you delay the miracle that is your becoming. But let us go deeper. Let us go beyond the surface of motivation and into the sacred soil of truth. What is an excuse, truly, but a refusal to meet the present moment as it is? What is an excuse but a veil placed between yourself and your own power? Lao Tzu said, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. The oak tree does not say, I'll grow when I feel confident. The river does not say, I will flow once I know the outcome. They move because movement is in their nature, and so it is with you. You were designed not for hesitation, but for expression. Not for fear, but for fullness. Not for paralysis, but for presence. Every excuse is a story, but not every story is true. Many are inherited from a world that forgot how to listen to the soul, a world obsessed with certainty, approval, and control. But the soul needs none of these things. The soul only needs your willingness, the willingness to show up, imperfect but real, the willingness to risk being seen, not in your polished armor, but in your sacred vulnerability, the willingness to act not because you are guaranteed success, but because you are alive, and aliveness is reason enough. And when you drop your excuses not out of force but out of love, you begin to see that life was never waiting for you to be ready. Life was simply waiting for you to say yes. Yes to the call. Yes to the truth. Yes to the deep, wordless knowing that your dreams were never random. They are the whispers of your highest self calling you home. And the truth is this. The life you're craving, the freedom you seek, the peace you long for, it all begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. Let the soul lead. Let the excuses die. Let this moment be the beginning of your sacred return. You see, the great lie of excuses is not just in what they prevent you from doing, it is in who they prevent you from being. They are the quiet thieves of your becoming. They do not shout or scream, they whisper with seductive familiarity. Stay where it's safe, they murmur. Wait until the conditions are perfect, they advise. But life, in its infinite intelligence, has never once waited for perfection to begin. The stars were not aligned by planning. The mountains did not rise because they calculated their safety. They became what they are by simply being what they are. So too with you. The most radical act of your existence is not in doing more, acquiring more, becoming more. It is in shedding the layers of fiction that tell you why you cannot begin. The caterpillar does not earn its wings through achievement. It dissolves. It surrenders. And in the surrender, transformation unfolds not as effort, but as inevitability. So I ask you, what within you is ready to dissolve? What part of you, clinging so tightly to fear, is actually begging to be let go? When you release the story releases you, and what remains is not emptiness, but clarity, not absence, but presence. The present moment is not waiting for your permission. It is offering itself to you endlessly, like an open hand extended from the heart of the universe. Your excuses are the only thing that refuse to reach back. Let them go. Let go of the excuse that says, I don't have time. Time is not found, it is honored. It stretches itself in proportion to your alignment. When you stop giving your energy to what numbs you, time returns as a gift, not a scarcity. Let go of the excuse that says, I'm not smart enough, not worthy enough, not talented enough. You are not here to impress the world, you are here to express your soul. And your soul does not measure itself by credentials or praise. It only asks, are you willing to show up with your whole heart? Let go of the excuse that says, I'm too broken. My dear one, what you call broken, the divine calls open. Every crack in your being is a portal for light. Rumi whispered it through the centuries. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Stop trying to seal the wound, let it shine. And as the excuses fall away, you will feel it not in your mind, but in your chest, that holy burning, that sacred unrest. The quiet insistence that you were made for more, not more things, but more truth. Not more success, but more presence. Not more control, but more surrender. This world does not need more people following the rules of limitation. It needs people who remember. Remember that the power moving through them is older than any fear, older than every excuse, older than the stories of separation. And when you truly remember, excuses no longer hold power. Because power returns to its rightful place within you. Not the power to dominate, but the power to allow. Not the power to strive, but the power to trust. Not the power to perform, but the power to simply be what you already are, enough. And from that place, from that sacred center within you where the voice of God is not spoken but felt, you begin to walk differently. You begin to breathe more deeply. You begin to live as if your very presence is a blessing, because it is. You are not here to be kept small by your fears. You are not here to wear the costume of limitation. You are here to be a lighthouse, not by force, not by seeking, but by simply standing in the truth of who you already are. Steady, luminous, unapologetically real. The only thing that ever stood between you and that light was a lie. And the lie is no longer welcome. The mind so trained to protect, to calculate, to defend will resist this unfolding. It will cling to its catalog of justifications like armor made of shadow. But you were not born to be a soldier in a war against yourself. You were born to lay down your defenses and remember that nothing real can be threatened and nothing false can endure. The excuses you carry were inherited not from your spirit, but from the fearful voices of a world that forgot its own divinity. They were taught to you not because they are truth, but because those before you didn't know how to live without them. But now you do. You can feel it, can't you? That trembling edge where the familiar lie meets the unknown truth. It is not fear you are feeling, it is recognition. It is the soul saying, yes, this is the moment I've been waiting for. And in that sacred recognition, something begins to melt. The voice that once said, I can't, starts to stutter. The wall you thought would protect you begins to feel like a prison. And you realize with breathtaking clarity that the only thing between you and the life you long to live is your own agreement with limitation. But what if you stop agreeing? What if you stop making treaties with doubt, stop signing contracts with hesitation, stop aligning with the voice that says later? The soul does not operate in the currency of delay. It is only ever present, ever now. It is the breath that asks to be taken fully, the step that begs to be walked boldly, the word that longs to be spoken without apology. There is no someday in the language of the soul. Someday is the chorus of the ego's lullaby, the sweet-sounding sedative that keeps your dreams in a coma. But the soul is not asleep. It is wide-eyed, wide open, and aching for you to stop postponing your own brilliance. Stop waiting for permission to shine. Stop asking fear to approve your expansion. Stop trying to explain to the world why you're worthy of what was already promised to you by your very existence. When you were born, the universe did not say, you are conditionally divine. It said, you are my expression, my extension, my embodiment. What greater permission could you need? And yet, how many times have you silenced yourself, choked back your gifts, swallowed your truth because you feared it wasn't enough? And how many of those moments were based not on reality, but on an excuse? It's time to see excuses for what they truly are. Ghosts made of thought. They appear solid only because you fed them your belief. But when you stop feeding them, when you simply see them and say, no more, they begin to fade. This is not the voice of blame. This is the voice of liberation. There is no shame in having carried your excuses. There is only freedom in laying them down. You did not know before, now you do. You are not being punished. You are being invited. Invited into a higher agreement. An agreement not built on fear, but on truth. Not built on delay, but on devotion. Not built on excuses, but on sacred willingness. Willingness to rise. Willingness to speak. Willingness to become what your soul already knows you are. And that becoming it does not begin with perfection. It begins with honesty. It begins with one raw, quiet moment of saying, I've used these excuses long enough. They are not who I am. They are not who I choose to be. And in that choice, the universe responds, not with applause, but with alignment. The people you need begin to appear. The opportunities you feared missing begin to find you. The doors you thought were closed forever begin to crack open, not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them with your own resistance. When you step into your truth, life stops being something you chase. It becomes something you embody. And what you embody, you attract. This is the law, not of effort, but of energy. This is the gospel, not of striving, but of surrender. And surrender does not mean passivity. It means alignment. It means ceasing to argue with reality and instead choosing to flow with the rhythm of your own being. The excuses are not your rhythm. They are static on the frequency of your soul. And the moment you stop tuning into them, your real life begins. Your real life does not begin when you fix everything. It begins when you stop pretending you are broken. It does not begin when the world agrees with you. It begins when you stop needing its agreement. It does not begin at the top of a mountain after the climb, when you're finally exhausted from proving yourself. It begins the moment you lay down the heavy armor of excuses and say, I am ready to be seen, not as a polished version of myself, but as the honest, holy, trembling truth that I am. And this truth, it does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives in silence, like the first light of dawn spilling across the floor. It arrives in the breath you finally take when you stop trying to become and begin to allow. That's what this journey has always been about. Not becoming more, but allowing the magnificence that was already coded into your very being to rise to the surface. Do not mistake your excuses for humility. True humility is not the denial of your light, it is the full acceptance of it without comparison or condition. It is the deep bow to the divine within you, not in arrogance, but in reverence. The ego will tell you that making excuses is being realistic. But realism, when infected with fear, becomes imprisonment. What they call realistic is often just deeply rehearsed limitation. And what they call fantasy is often the first language of your soul. Dreams are not distractions, they are blueprints. They are the soul's sacred architecture waiting for the builder, waiting for you to believe again. But you cannot build from fear. You cannot build from delay. You cannot build from the voice that says, not now, maybe later, not me. That voice is not you. That voice is a program one that began long before you could speak, whispered to you by the frightened voices of others who never gave themselves permission to live fully. And still, despite all this, you are here. Do you see the miracle of that? You are here, reading this, listening with the ears beneath your ears, feeling something stir, something ancient, something familiar. The part of you that is always known. You were made for more than what you've settled for. You were made not just to survive, but to sing. Not just to perform, but to pour. Not just to meet expectations, but to exceed the boundaries of what others thought was possible. But to do that, you must give up the addiction to waiting. Waiting for the fear to go away. waiting for more validation, waiting for the storm to pass, for the mood to shift, for someone else to give you the green light. You are the green light. You are the permission. You are the moment you've been waiting for. And I know it's easier said than done. I know the mind is clever. It will offer you excuses that sound like logic, like safety, like reason. But hear this, the soul was never meant to live a reasonable life. The soul was meant to live a radiant one, a life that doesn't always make sense to the world, but always makes truth inside your being. You do not have to know the whole path. You only have to take the next honest step. And then another, not guided by pressure, but by presence. Not fueled by proving, but by listening to the still, small voice that never once gave up on you. The voice that speaks not in sentences, but in sensations, not in commands, but in invitations. The invitation is simple. Stop believing your excuses. Start trusting your essence. You will falter, yes. You will doubt, yes. But faltering is not failure. Doubt is not the end. They are just pauses along the road, reminders to breathe deeper, to come back home to yourself. And what waits for you there within that home is not a harsher taskmaster, but a softer strength. A strength that whispers, even now, even with everything you think disqualifies you, you are still worthy. And so I ask you, not with urgency, but with love, what are you willing to release today? Which excuse have you outgrown? What truth is ready to be lived, not tomorrow, not someday, but now? Because now is the only altar life has ever offered you. And you, beloved, are the offering. There is a quiet place within you that has never once spoken in excuses. It does not need reasons to exist. It does not barter for its value. It does not consult your wounds to determine your worth. This place, this inner temple, is where your true life lives. Not the life you perform, but the life you long for when the noise of the world subsides. And the truth is that life is already yours. It has been waiting patiently, not for you to become better, but for you to stop pretending you are less. Excuses are not merely thoughts, they are agreements. Contracts signed with fear that declare, I will not try unless I am guaranteed to win. I will not love unless I am guaranteed not to be hurt. I will not step forward unless the path is fully lit. But this is not how life works. This is not how the soul dances. The soul does not require certainty, it only asks for honesty. The next honest step, the next honest breath. That is all. When you strip away your excuses, what remains is not weakness. What remains is possibility. Infinite, sacred, frightening, glorious possibility. And this, precisely this, is what your ego fears the most. Not your failure, but your fullness. Because fullness does not beg, it does not explain, it does not negotiate with doubt. It simply shines. To stand in your fullness is to become luminous, and this world has no defense against the fully alive. That is why it teaches you to dim, to delay, to doubt, because the truly awakened are not controllable. They move by a different rhythm. They hear a drum that beats beneath time. They follow a compass that the world cannot understand because it is calibrated not by logic, but by love. And love is always now, not later. Now, that is why your excuses cannot coexist with love, because love will not wait. It is not impatient, but it is real. It is raw. It is ready to be lived in this breath, through this body, in this life. And that means the excuses must fall, not by force, not with violence, but like autumn leaves dropping from branches that no longer need to hold them. You are not here to hold on to old reasons. You are here to become a tree that lets go. You are here to release the narrative that you are not prepared, not capable, not chosen. You were chosen the moment you were born, not by chance, but by intention. The divine does not create mistakes. It creates messages. And your life, your full, unedited, undelayed life is the message. What are you saying to the world by the way you live? Are you saying, I am afraid, so I hide? Or are you saying, I feel the fear and I rise anyway? Are you saying, I need proof before I act? Or are you saying, I trust the wisdom that brought me this far? You are the message. Not your achievements, not your possessions, not your appearances. Your presence, your energy, your yes. The yes that says, I will no longer be defined by hesitation. I will no longer carry stories that are not mine. I will no longer shrink to fit the comfort zones of others. Because excuses do not only limit you, they limit the world's access to the real you. There are people you were born to reach. There are hearts you were meant to soften, lives you were meant to touch, beauty you were meant to embody. But they cannot find you behind your excuses. They cannot meet you inside your delay. To choose your soul's truth is not a selfish act. It is the most generous act you can offer. When you rise, you raise the vibration of every room you enter. When you speak from your center, you become a tuning fork for those around you. When you stop hiding, you give others permission to be real. This is not about motivation. It is about consecration, a holy recommitment to live from the depth of your being, no matter what the world says. You do not need more time. You need more truth. You do not need a better plan. You need a clearer yes. And you already know what it is. That dream, that desire, that inner calling that keeps returning, no matter how many times you dismiss it, that is not random. That is your soul remembering itself. And your excuses, no matter how rational they sound, are only the static trying to drown out the sacred frequency of your becoming. But you are stronger than your static. You are braver than your delay. You are more powerful than any excuse you have ever made. And the world is not waiting for a perfect you. It is waiting for a present you. So be here, be now, be full. The excuse has spoken long enough. It is your soul's turn to speak. There is an ache within you that no accomplishment can soothe, a quiet pull in the chest felt in the silent hours when the world is asleep and there is no one left to perform for. It is not the ache of weakness. It is the ache of remembering that beneath the noise, the striving, the masks, you have always longed to be free. But freedom cannot exist where the past still holds dominion. So many of the excuses that shape your present have roots buried in yesterday. Old hurts wearing new names, childhood doubts dressed in adult logic. You say, this is just how I am, but often what you mean is, this is what I became to survive. And there is no shame in that, none. Every wall you built was built for protection. Every mask you wore was a prayer for safety. Every excuse you uttered was a quiet attempt to make sense of a world that didn't always know how to hold your light. But now you are no longer a child. And the soul within you, ancient, wise, eternal, knows that your past does not have the authority to govern your becoming. It may inform you, but it does not define you. There is grief in this recognition, a necessary grief. For when we stop blaming the past, we also stop hiding behind it. We can no longer say, I am this way because they hurt me, or I cannot move forward because of what happened. We must stand in the raw, holy truth that no one is coming to liberate us but ourselves. And that is terrifying until it is liberating. Because once you accept that the past cannot be changed, you begin to realize that it does not need to be changed for you to be whole. You were never waiting on it to be rewritten. You were waiting on yourself to release it. Release the moment they didn't see you. Release the time you weren't enough in their eyes. Release the years spent apologizing for your sensitivity, your intensity, your dreams. Release the lie that the pain made you weak. It did not. It made you deep. But do not confuse depth with identity. You are not the pain. You are the one who endured it. The one who carried it, not as a curse, but as a hidden seed, waiting for the right season to break open and bloom. This is that season. The soul does not yearn for revenge. It does not crave explanation. It longs only for release. It whispers in every quiet moment, let me be free, not because the past is forgotten, but because I have remembered who I am beyond it. And who you are beyond it is magnificent. Not in spite of the pain, but somehow miraculously because of it. Your scars are not stains. They are sacred inscriptions, proof that you have felt deeply, broken open, and continued. And now the soul invites you to let the story shift, to let the weight drop, to stop dragging the coffin of who you used to be into the dawn of who you are becoming. You cannot walk freely while carrying a suitcase full of ghosts. Let them go. Let go not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to breathe without the weight of yesterday pressing on your lungs. You deserve to dance without the memory of past missteps shackling your feet. You deserve to speak not from old wounds, but from new wisdom. And yes, it will hurt. The unraveling always does. The heart must be broken open to finally be free. But you are not breaking apart, you are breaking through. The excuses that cling to your past are not loyal friends. they are comfortable chains. And comfort, when misused, becomes a prison. But growth asks you to leave the familiar cells behind, not because they are evil, but because they are too small for your soul. And your soul, it is vast. It is the sky behind every storm, the light behind every loss, the breath behind every heartbeat. It knows that your pain was real, but your power is more real. So return now. Return to that quiet knowing. Return to the self that never forgot you. The self beneath the history, beneath the habits, beneath the hurt. And in that return, say aloud the words that change everything. I forgive, I release, I rise. Not as a mantra, but as a vow. A vow to stop abandoning yourself at the altar of the past. A vow to no longer let old wounds speak louder than your future. A vow to finally, fully, unapologetically be free. You have walked through the fire of remembering. You have stood at the edge of your old stories and watched them dissolve in the presence of a deeper truth. You have seen that your excuses were never the voice of wisdom. They were the echoes of fear. You have felt the weight of your past not as a burden to carry, but as a teacher whose lessons you no longer need to repeat. And now you are ready. Ready not to perform, not to prove, but to live, truly live from the soul's quiet yes. You do not need a new name. You do not need a new body or another diploma or one more person to validate what your heart has known since before you had words. You were born for this. Not for the life of avoidance, not for the endless rehearsal of what if and not yet, but for this exact moment, this breath, this stillness, this remembering. And what are you remembering? That your life is not something to manage, it is something to feel. That your soul is not a concept, it is the most real part of you. That every time you chose to wait, a piece of you withered not out of punishment, but because truth cannot thrive in delay. And now the light is here, not shining down from some distant star, but rising from within. You are no longer the seeker, you are what was being sought. You are not what happened to you. You are what continues, what expands, what transcends. You are not a victim of time, you are the presence through which time unfolds. And in this presence there are no excuses. Not because life is now easy, but because you have become honest. And honesty is freedom. When the voice of fear says, you must wait, you will respond, I begin now. When the memory whispers, you are still broken, you will answer, I am more whole than I have ever been. When the world demands you earn your worth, you will smile and say, it was never yours to give me. And when the old you tries to rise, when the habit of hiding returns, when the impulse to explain resurfaces, you will place a hand on your heart and say gently, shh, I hear you. But we are done with that now. We walk in truth. Because truth does not rush. It does not chase. It does not fear rejection. It simply is. You are no longer a creation of your fears. You are now a servant of your soul. And this world, oh, how it has waited for this version of you, the unarmored you, the illuminated you, the you who no longer makes excuses for your power, your presence, your voice. Let others chase. Let others strive. Let others wait. But you walk. Barefoot, present, aligned. You walk not in search of freedom, but as freedom. You walk not to escape life, but to sanctify it. You walk with nothing to prove, because your being proves everything. And in this walking, life becomes different, not because the world changes, but because your eyes do, your heart does. You begin to notice beauty again, raw, uncurated, holy. You begin to speak with softness that disarms. You begin to listen not for what to say next, but for what is sacred in the silence. You are no longer a collection of reactions. You are a fountain of response, clear, gentle, true. This is not just your liberation. It is your return. Return to the breath that does not beg. Return to the self that needs no defense. Return to the love that is not transactional, but intrinsic. Return to the moment that asks for nothing but your presence. There are no more delays. There is nothing left to wait for. The excuses have fallen. The past has been honored and released. The soul stands naked and unafraid. And you are finally home. Not in a place, not in a role, but in yourself. In the truth that can no longer be silenced. You are not your excuses. You are not your delay. You are not your fear. You are free. And freedom begins now. There will come a time, quiet, subtle, barely a whisper in the noise of your days, when something within you leans forward and asks, "Is this all there is?" And in that sacred pause, the soul speaks, not with thunder, but with certainty. "No, beloved, there is more, but not more to get more to remember, because you are not missing anything. You are not waiting for completion. You are not lacking a single thread of the divine tapestry that wove you into being. You already have everything you need." This is not a hopeful idea, it is a spiritual law. Just as the seed contains the tree, just as the acorn carries the oak, you carry within you the fullness of who you came here to be. Not someday, not after healing, not when the world sees your worth. Now, already, completely. But the world does not teach you this. The world teaches you to chase. It teaches you to compare, to strive, to climb invisible ladders. It teaches you that your enoughness lives in someone else's eyes, in future accomplishments, in the arms of those who validate your existence. And so you begin to forget. You begin to believe the lie that you must earn your wholeness. You begin to believe that you are a project to be fixed rather than a soul to be remembered. But the soul cannot be fixed because it is not broken. It can only be revealed. And so the journey begins not outward but inward, not into the maze of doing, but into the sanctuary of being. Everything you seek, the peace, the joy, the certainty, the love, is not outside of you waiting to be attained. It is within you waiting to be recognized, waiting for you to get quiet enough, honest enough, present enough to see that you are not the seeker, you are what was sought all along. There's a still place inside you. It is not moved by external winds. It is not shaken by circumstance. It does not fear change or loss or time. That place is your home. It is the eternal spark within you that existed before your name, before your personality, before you began building an identity that the world could praise. And this home, this sacred silent space, is where everything you've ever needed lives. It is where God resides, not in temples of stone, but in temples of breath and skin and quiet surrender. The Tao Te Ching teaches us, when you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. This is not poetry. This is reality. Lack is not truth. It is perception. Scarcity is not your destiny, it is your conditioning. And every time you remember this, even for a breath, the chains begin to fall away. The ego will tell you that you must chase more, become more, prove more. But the soul says simply, be. Be what you already are. Live from the wholeness that has never left. Act not from the hunger of incompleteness, but from the overflow of inner wealth. The more you believe you need something outside of yourself, the further you drift from your center. And yet, the moment you return, the moment you pause, breathe, and remember, you see with new eyes. You see that you are not a beggar at the gates of life. You are the life itself. You are not the drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. This is the great awakening. Not the acquisition of something new, but the shedding of everything false. The letting go of every story that said you were less. The quiet reclaiming of the truth that has never stopped pulsing through your being. And that truth is this: you already have everything you need to love, to forgive, to create, to live with depth and peace and radiant presence. The question is not whether it is there. The question is whether you will trust it. Will you trust that your worth is not in what you do, but in who you are? Will you trust that your path is not behind or ahead of you, but unfolding in this very breath? Will you trust that what you feel drawn to, the dreams, the callings, the longings, are not random desires, but the voice of the divine within you calling you back to your own essence? To trust this is to be free. Free from the tyranny of not yet. Free from the burden of when I have. Oh, free from the lie of if only. And in that freedom, your life becomes a sacred unfolding. Not a race to be run, but a song to be sung. Not a mountain to conquer, but a river to flow with. Not a task to complete, but a gift to savor. You do not need to be different. You need only to be true. And the truth, the deep, eternal, unshakable truth, is that you lack nothing. The sky does not ask the birds for permission to fly. The stars do not wait for applause before they shine. And you, beautiful soul, do not need the world's validation to be worthy of your own love. You are whole. You are holy. You are already what you seek. You already have everything you need. And now you are remembering. There is a wisdom in you that has never aged, a knowing that existed long before the world taught you to doubt. It does not speak in noise or drama, but in quiet nudges, in subtle peace, in the way your heart feels soft when you stop trying. This wisdom does not need to be earned, it simply needs to be heard. You are not separate from the source that created you. You are not an echo of divinity, you are its living expression. Just as a wave cannot exist apart from the ocean, you cannot be apart from God. Even when you forget, even when you wander, even when you wrap yourself in stories of insufficiency, the truth remains you are one with all that is. And when you remember this, you no longer try to manipulate life to make yourself feel safe. You stop forcing doors open, you stop begging for signs, you stop bargaining with the universe. Instead, you begin to live from the inner wealth that has always been yours. You move not to get something, but to express something. You create not to fill a void, but to overflow. You love not to earn it, but because it is what you are made of. Every moment is sacred when you see it through the eyes of enoughness. Washing the dishes, walking through the silence of morning, listening to the rhythm of your own breath, these become acts of devotion when you realize you are not preparing for life, you are living it right now, already. The present is not a waiting room for something better, it is the treasure. It is the field where everything you have been searching for gently blooms, but you must be here to receive it. Not mentally here, not physically checking the box, but soulfully present, bare, open, surrendered. And yet how often we miss it. How often we are consumed by what is not yet, by what might go wrong, by the mind's endless demands for proof. The ego thrives on dissatisfaction. It survives by keeping you looking elsewhere. But the soul, oh, the soul, it only wants you to come home. Home to this breath, home to this heartbeat. Home to the holy stillness that requires nothing from you but your being. Let yourself return. Return to the inner garden that has never stopped growing. Return to the place before your name, before your doubts, before the conditioning that told you something was missing. Return and you will see you are not the cracks, you are the light that pours through them. There is no better version of you waiting in the future. There is only a deeper version of you waiting to be lived now. You don't become more by acquiring. You become more by shedding, by releasing every layer that isn't you, by letting go of the performance, the role, the attachment. True richness does not come from what you have. It comes from how fully you inhabit yourself. And when you are full, not of things, but of presence, the universe bends to meet you there. Not because you manipulated it into doing so, but because alignment is the most natural state of being. Your life does not need more effort. It needs more allowing. It needs more trust in the divine rhythm that beats your heart and turns the stars. That rhythm is in you. You are not apart from it. You are it. You are not the separate observer. You are the expression of the one that observes all. The mystics have said for centuries, seek ye first the kingdom within, not because it's a poetic idea, but because it is the only truth. Everything you seek is a reflection of something you already carry. The love, the peace, the clarity, the purpose, it all begins when you stop looking out and start looking in. Not inward to analyze, to dissect, to fix, but inward to feel, to remember, to surrender, to dwell in the truth of your own enoughness without rushing to prove it. When you stop chasing what you already are, the chase ends. And in its place, something sacred begins a life not defined by striving, but by serenity, not built on achievement, but on alignment. You are not here to find the light. You are here to remove everything that covers it. You are not here to earn your worth. You are here to live from it. You already have everything you need. And the more you believe that, the more you see it reflected in every face, every breath, every step. Because life is not withholding from you. It is waiting for you to see clearly. And when you see clearly, you stop bargaining with reality. You stop arguing with what is. You stop resisting the moment as though your freedom lies somewhere else. You begin to soften, not because you've given up, but because you've awakened. You realize the fight was never with life, it was with your belief that you were separate from it. There is a deep peace that arises when you stop trying to escape your life and instead choose to inhabit it fully. Not the life you think you should be living, not the image you crafted for others to admire, but the life that is here, raw and honest and unpolished, exactly as it is. This is where the sacred is not in perfection, but in presence. Presence does not require that everything feel good. It only requires that you stay, that you breathe through the discomfort instead of running from it, that you feel what's true instead of numbing it, that you trust that even pain has a message not to punish you, but to open you. Every wound is a doorway, every ache a reminder. not of what you've lost, but of what wants to be remembered. The longing you feel is not lack. It is the echo of wholeness calling you back. You would not long for what wasn't already within you. You do not yearn for what you lack. You yearn for what you are. You are not meant to live in fragments. You are not here to hold your breath until everything feels safe. You are here to open, to expand, to embody the vastness that has always been your nature. And that expansion doesn't come through force, it comes through surrender. To surrender is not to give up, it is to give in to the deeper truth. To trust the ground beneath your feet, even when you cannot see the whole path. To know that you are supported, not by your control, but by the intelligence that moves the tides and grows the forests and knows exactly how to move through you too. You are not alone in this. You never have been. Every breath is a companion, every silence a guide. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, is infused with the same intelligence that births stars. And you are not separate from that. You are not less than that. You are that. And once you remember this, the idea of needing more to be whole dissolves. The chase fades. The striving quiets. And what remains is the truth you always knew, but were too distracted to hear, that everything you thought you needed was never outside of you. It was always here, waiting, constant, eternal. You do not need to find your worth. You need to stop believing the thoughts that tell you it is missing. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to love yourself deeply enough to no longer pretend you are broken. Wholeness is not something you reach. It is something you remember. It is not in the future. It is now. It is this breath. It is the quiet presence watching your thoughts. It is the love that never left even when you did. It is the God within you, not far above, but deeply here. And from this place, you begin to live differently. You speak with more intention. You move with more grace. You choose not from fear, but from clarity, not to prove, but to express. You are no longer trying to win life. You are dancing with it. This dance has no winner. It has no goal. It is the expression of truth in motion, the celebration of presence, the embodiment of soul. And it becomes available the moment you release the idea that something is missing. So release it now. Let go of the story. Let go of the chase. Let go of the illusion that your enoughness lies in some distant version of you. You already have everything you need. Not because you are done evolving, but because your essence has never been incomplete. And now finally, you are ready to live from that place. You are ready not because the world has changed, but because you have. Because something in you, something ancient and silent, has stirred awake and whispered, enough. Enough of the striving, enough of the masks, enough of abandoning yourself in pursuit of an idea that was never yours to begin with. You are ready because the pain of pretending has become heavier than the fear of being seen. And so you begin to live with more honesty, not just in your words, but in your energy. You no longer say yes when your soul is screaming no. You no longer stay where you must dim your light to be accepted. You no longer sacrifice your truth for approval. Not out of rebellion, but out of reverence. Reverence for the sacred within you that can no longer be denied. This reverence becomes your compass. It leads you not by logic, but by alignment. It guides you to places, to people, to purposes that match your frequency. And the more you trust it, the more life begins to unfold, not as a battle to be won, but as a gift to be received. You stop pushing against the current. You stop hustling for worth. You begin to flow not with passivity, but with presence. Presence is power. Not the power to control, but the power to create from truth. It is the power that comes when you no longer betray yourself, when your inner and outer worlds are no longer at war, when your actions rise from the stillness within rather than the fear without. And from this stillness, you begin to remember your true nature, not as a personality, but as a presence, not as a performer, but as a vessel, not as a seeker, but as the sought. You are not here to get something from life. You are here to bring something to it. Something only you can offer when you are rooted in your enoughness. What you bring is not your resume, your image, your accolades. What you bring is your energy, your intention, your presence, your capacity to be real in a world addicted to pretending. Your willingness to love without conditions, to serve without agenda, to speak without fear. This is the soul in motion. This is truth in action. This is freedom, not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of self-abandonment. And in this freedom, you begin to realize that joy is not a reward. It is your natural state when you are no longer chasing life, but dancing with it. The dance is not choreographed. It does not follow the rules of the mind. It is felt, not planned. It is lived, not strategized. And the music only begins when you are willing to be fully here, not in the story of who you were, not in the anxiety of who you might become, but in the deep breath of this exact moment. This breath is holy. This moment is enough. This being, your being, is already whole. And from this knowing, your life becomes a sacred expression, not of trying to be something, but of remembering what you already are. So let yourself remember the stillness beneath the noise. Remember the love beneath the fear. Remember the light beneath a story. You do not need to add anything to yourself to be worthy. You only need to peel away the illusion that told you otherwise. And as you peel, as you soften, as you surrender, you return. You return to yourself. You return to the place where nothing is missing. You return to the truth that you already have everything you need. And from that place, all things become possible. And when all things become possible, not through the might of your striving, but through the clarity of your being, life ceases to be a burden to carry and becomes a miracle to behold. You no longer measure your worth in tasks completed or standards met, but in how open your heart remains, how true your voice becomes, how gentle you are with yourself when you falter. You understand now that the soul doesn't move in straight lines, it spirals, it returns, it deepens. And every return is not a regression, but a rerouting. Every loop is another layer shedding, another truth remembered. You begin to move through the world like water soft, yet unstoppable. You let go of needing to be understood because you have come home to understanding yourself. You let go of needing to be seen because you now walk in the light of your own presence. You let go of needing to be validated because your own breath has become your teacher, your guide, your sanctuary. You are no longer in search of the next thing to fill you. You are in the practice of noticing what has always been full. And in this noticing, there is beauty. Beauty in the mundane, beauty in the imperfect, beauty in the pauses between plans. The sky becomes a message, the breeze a blessing. A stranger's glance, a silent affirmation that we are all walking each other home. You stop needing life to shout to believe it is sacred. You hear its whispers in everything. You stop asking for signs and start realizing that everything is a sign, every moment, every interaction, every breath, a divine reminder that you are not lost, you are not late, you are not lacking. There is a quiet confidence that rises when you no longer outsource your power. You stop seeking experts to tell you who you are. You stop collecting opinions to build an identity. You stop waiting for permission to be free. You trust your own soul as the highest authority. You let your intuition lead not as a rebellious act, but as a return to natural order. You don't reject guidance. You just remember that the most sacred guidance comes from within. And from this place, your relationships change, not because others change, but because you no longer enter them from emptiness. You no longer try to be chosen. You no longer shapeshift for safety. You no longer confuse attachment with love. You bring your whole self present, rooted, unapologetic, and in doing so, you create space for others to do the same. The connection deepens, or it falls away. And either way, you remain whole. You see now that letting go is not loss, it is alignment. It is the shedding of all that was built on forgetting, all that was born from fear. And in its place, something ancient blooms, a presence that needs no defense, a peace that does not demand conditions, a joy that rises without reason. This is the state of being that changes everything, not through force, but through frequency. The world around you begins to mirror your internal shift, not because you willed it, but because you aligned with what has always been real. Abundance flows, not because you grasped it, but because you finally stopped resisting your own worthiness. Love flows, not because you earned it, but because you became it. Clarity arises not from overthinking, but from stillness. You see now that the universe is not outside you, it is responding to you, reflecting you, expressing through you. And so you let go of the narrative that life owes you something. You let go of the bitterness that came from unmet expectations. You let go of the pressure to always be more, always do more, always reach higher, because now you know what you are is not a destination, it is a presence. And in that presence, everything is already here. You already have everything you need. You always did. And now you believe it. And in this belief, a sacred silence begins to settle within you, not the silence of absence, but the silence of fullness. The kind of silence that doesn't seek to be filled because it already contains everything. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the space between thoughts. This is not stillness as a pause, it is stillness as power. It is the quiet, unwavering center from which all truth arises. You begin to speak less, but say more. You listen not to reply, but to understand. You act not to achieve, but to express. Your life becomes an extension of your essence, not a performance crafted to gain favor. You realize that simplicity is not lack, it is clarity. And clarity is the gateway to depth, to freedom, to connection that requires no explanation. The ego, once so loud, begins to dissolve without a fight. It does not need to be destroyed. It simply loses relevance in the presence of truth. Its voice becomes softer, its stories transparent. You begin to recognize its fear as a relic of survival, no longer necessary in the light of your awakening, and so you thank it without believing it. You honor its role without obeying its commands. Now your decisions are born not from scarcity, but from knowing. You no longer ask, what will they think, but instead, what is true for me? You no longer wait for signs that you are enough. You move as someone who remembers the truth cannot be undone by opinion. This is what it means to live from within, to allow the internal compass to guide you even when the path is uncertain, even when the world does not yet understand. And slowly, your very energy becomes a sanctuary. People feel peace in your presence, not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You radiate a quiet joy that doesn't require conditions. You hold space for others, not by fixing, but by being. And in your being, others begin to remember their own. This is the ripple of remembrance. This is the light that spreads without trying. You do not need to preach it, you only need to live it, because authenticity is the most powerful transmission. A soul aligned with its own enoughness becomes medicine in a world starving for truth. And yet you remain humble, because the soul does not need titles, it does not seek applause. It only seeks presence, it only longs to be lived. And when you live it, even in the quietest ways, you fulfill a purpose deeper than words. You become the embodiment of a truth that can only be felt, that we are already whole, already free, already complete. You do not need to do more to be worthy of this life. You only need to open your hands and receive what was never withheld. The beauty, the love, the wisdom, the grace. It is not arriving tomorrow. It is here, now, always. And so, beloved soul, you come to the end that is not an ending, but a great beginning, not a conclusion, but a return. A return to the truth that was whispered at your first breath and never stopped echoing beneath the noise. You already have everything you need, not because you finally earned it, not because life has finally agreed, but because the source of life has always been within you, quietly pulsing, eternally waiting for your remembrance. You look around now with different eyes, the same sky but deeper, the same faces but more sacred, the same steps but grounded in peace. Because you no longer move through the world with a wound to fill, you move as one who carries light, and not a borrowed light, not a conditional light, but your own, the light of presence, the light of self-trust, the light of divine belonging. You are no longer chasing your reflection in other people's approval. You are no longer chasing your future like it holds your salvation. You have stopped running, not because you have given up, but because you have arrived. Arrived in this moment, arrived in your body, arrived in the temple of now where your soul finally gets to exhale. And with that exhale, you drop the weight of shoulds, the weight of roles, the weight of stories that said you were not yet there. You lay them down like worn garments, and you walk barefoot into the sacredness of this breath. And this breath holds the whole universe. This breath reminds you that you are not separate, not forgotten, not behind. You are home. You begin to live not to get somewhere, but to feel something. You begin to speak not to be right, but to be real. You begin to give not to be loved, but because love has become the language of your being. There is no longer a gap between who you are and how you live. The inner world and the outer world have begun to mirror each other, not because life became perfect, but because you stopped needing it to be. And in this space, sacred, silent, surrendered, the miracle occurs. Life begins to flow through you with ease, not the ease of passivity, but the ease of alignment. The ease that comes when you are no longer rowing against the current of your own soul. The ease that says, I trust myself. I trust life. I trust that I am held by something far greater than my fears. This trust becomes your foundation. This trust becomes your prayer. And from this trust, your life unfolds not as a performance, but as a poem. Each moment a verse, each breath a blessing. Each encounter a sacred exchange in the great remembering. And now you know, not as theory, but as embodiment, that nothing was ever missing. You were never incomplete. The treasure was not buried far away. It was always here, in your breath, in your being, in the stillness between your thoughts. You were never meant to chase the light. You were meant to remember you are the light. So live now, not as someone trying to become, but as someone who remembers. Walk as if your feet are holy. Speak as if your words are sacred. Love as if you have nothing to lose. Because you don't. You already have everything. Everything that matters, everything that's real, everything that awakens, heals, connects, and liberates. You already have everything you need. And now, you know,